FAML445.
Okay, I'm Lynetta Young. Are you guys going to do your names or?
Oh, I'm Rebecca Bartholomew.
Lexi Wilson.
Erin Chastain.
Okay. So, the first thing in my outline I focused on was the program evaluation. I think I focused on this because I just finished my first workshop and read all the feedback, and so it was good to see the areas that I need to improve on. But in the book, it talked about developing a vision, and it reminded me of a scripture that said, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." And I think that's true. You have to have a vision to be able to accomplish your goal and to help you get to where you want to be. And so my vision for my workshop was to teach women effective coping strategies or stress coping strategies so they can have happier and healthier lives. And in the book, it also talked about how goals are one step more specific than vision, and they express general purpose. And then I stated the goals for my workshop. I really liked this part of the lesson, or the reading, because it helped me to understand what I needed to focus on for doing that assessment. And it's kind of when I read over my feedback from my first workshop, it was I take things very personally, so it was kind of hard to read like a little bit of it, but it was all stuff that I already knew and stuff that I'm like, yeah, it's true, that's what I need to work on. So it was good. It was good to get that feedback and know where I need to work to improve the next one. And hopefully I've done that. I've made some changes for my lesson plan tonight to hopefully make it more effective and more clear for them to understand. Also, for my second part of my outline, I talked about the ethics for family life education. And I really love that there's these principles and guidelines for family life educators. And I think it's really important to help us stay focused and to know, our boundaries and our goals as family life educators. And I'm also grateful that it had, it pointed out how to proceed when there is a conflict between the principles so that we can make sure we're protecting family members or people that we're working with that need help or need protection. So, okay, that's the end of my 3 minutes. Sorry.
I really enjoyed that. I think what the part that stood out to me most is where you're talking about how we have to have like a vision for our workshop or our program. And I think it stood out to me because it's really easy, like when we're getting stressed about like all the little details and putting the whole thing together, I think it's really easy to kind of forget like the main point. Like even with what we were talking about, like, okay, well, if you're running over on time, or if you if somebody won't stop talking, like what should you make sure that you do give the time towards? And it should be the things that, the vision. What was the main point? What was your vision for it? Like that's the important part. And so I think it just was like, oh, okay, that's right, I should focus on that rather than stressing out about these other things.
Yeah, that's true.
I agree. I think that's a good thing to keep coming back to. I like when you were talking about like the program evaluation. I'm with you. Feedback is hard to hear, and I'm always like, okay, I can take it. I can take it. But then I don't love it. I don't love to take it. So it is important. It helps you refine your program and make sure that it fits the needs of your audience, and ultimately it makes it better for them. And I think because of that, you can create a better program. So I'm glad that you I'm glad that you see that, and I feel the same way. And I think that's something that I'm working on with myself too, is just take it, bite the bullet, and do it and make it better.
Yeah. Glad I'm not alone. Thanks, Lexi.
Okay, sorry, my page got away from me and I couldn't unmute. I was looking at your outline here, and I liked the ethics that I like that you used that category. I also did that in my outline, and I liked the quote that you put in by Elder Christofferson. I always forget to include gospel stuff in my outlines, and so I think that that's important to have in there. And yeah, overall, I agree with what the two others said about the evaluation part of it too. But yeah, I like that you focus on the ethics as well.
Thanks.
And I guess it is my turn. Let's see. I feel like my outline was pretty not focused this week with a million other things going on. But my first, oh crap, let me time myself. Timer. Okay. So my first thing that I talked about was professional ethics, like I just said that I mentioned. So I talked about the ethical decision-making process that was in one of the readings. It was by the MCFR. And I really like the case studies that we worked on as a group last week. And it kind of really helped me to use those and to understand them more and kind of appreciate them more and see why they have them or why that process is important. And then for the specific ethics, the purpose of those and how to use them. And it said in the reading that there are expectations for professional behavior and stuff. And then there was talking about the evolving process, how it's an evolving process. So it's constantly changing over time as family needs evolve or changes. It changes when the boundaries of practice change. And then I went on to talk about the role and responsibility of, like our role and responsibility as family life educators. And I really liked when Myers talked about the why, what, when, for whom, and how, to become familiar with the answers to those questions and to be aware of the similarities and the differences so that we can focus on what we're doing, and so that we're not overlapping ourselves too much with areas that we're not supposed to be working in. And it kind of took away the hierarchy of the one that Doherty was talking about. And it kind of clarified the definition of family life educators. And then I went on to talk about comparing the two, the Doherty and the Myers guys in their articles. And I talked about the domains of family practice model that Myers kind of revamped. And I mentioned that it reviews the job setting, that individuals can decide which category best fits their skills, and kind of just described that a little bit, and included some quotes specifically from their from the reading, which you guys already know, so it's not important to reread those. But it was just kind of really helpful to read about it and to kind of see the areas to make sure that we don't get ahead of ourselves or undermine ourselves even. I feel like I'm more on that end of the spectrum because I'm like, I can't be doing this. But anyways, yeah, I'm out of time. So I hope that made sense.
I agree. I feel the same way. Like I'm not ready to be teaching this stuff. I feel like I'm not qualified, um, but at the same time, we've been taking all these classes and we really are. But or at least we're getting there, right? But I focused on some of the same things that you did here. I really appreciated the where was it? The diagrams and explaining how each of the certain or the family life educator and the therapist and the family case managers really all work together, and there's not really one that's more important than the other. That was really interesting to read about and try to distinguish, the difference between each of them, because they do work together and they kind of do run together in some ways. And in fact, I was talking to my mom on the phone the other day, and I was telling her I was maybe a family life educator, and she was like, well, what is that? Is that the same thing as a therapist? How is it different? And anyway, so it is good to understand the differences and how they complement each other. But good job. I enjoyed your outline.
Thank you. Yeah, that confused me for a while too. I kind of wish that we read those earlier in the semester to kind of have an idea, because I'm like, wow, that like opened my eyes to a lot of things.
I really enjoyed that. I kind of talk about the same thing, but I really like how you kind of talked about like comparing and contrasting it a little, and how you said that it's important for us not to like overestimate or undermine, because I think I'm like you a little bit, where I tend to be like, oh, well, I'm not qualified. I'm not qualified for that. Sorry. But it's a little funny when you think about it that, we're putting together these workshops, which is exactly like what a family life educator does. So it's like, technically, I guess we're going to come out with our degrees like qualified to do this. So we can't, be thinking, well, I can't contribute in any way. I need to do more. I need my master's. I need to be a therapist before I can contribute and make a difference. So I really liked that.
Thank you.
I liked, can you hear me?
Mhm.
It says my mute button is still on. Okay. I really liked what you were talking about with the ethics and kind of what we learned there with the principles and the case studies. Those were really helpful for me as well. And I think they really opened my eyes, because I think like the first principle is something to realize how much power you have over these families and over their situations, and how much you have. And that was one that like, and I think it impacts like my values and how I would like to be a family and life educator, what I would like to do. So I like that you talked about how those kind of shape what we they were really good, but just like how they influence ourselves as family life educators and what they do, and also what you talked about with Doherty and how that diagram works, and just kind of where we fit in there. They matter as far as like what we go into and how we shape our workshops and how we see them. So really good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, let's see.
Turning on my timer, sorry. Should have been prepared. Okay. So what I wanted to talk about was actually kind of right in the middle there, where it talks about like what a vision is, kind of like what Lynetta said. But just a little bit further down, why is having a vision important to a successful goal? And so kind of what I was thinking about is it's basically a way to like grade yourself. It's basically a way to say, okay, this is what I wanted to accomplish. How well did I do with that? And so whenever it was talking about like what can you do specifically, and how does looking at your vision help you to make your session and your classes better. What I had noticed is that so whenever we did our little how we're going to evaluate our classes, what I did was a questionnaire. And so I wanted to look at how I could improve my program, because I think the most important way to know how to improve the program is to know what your audience thought of it, either during the program or even after, what thoughts they had, what they came away from it with, because I feel like us as the teachers, we're biased. We either hate what we did or we think we were way too awesome. And I don't know which side of the spectrum I lie on that, but I know that I would be biased to my own class. And so really the only true way to know how your class is doing and what's going to make the difference is how your audience looks at it. And so some of the questions that I had as far as like improving my program is, I said, how do they feel when they leave? What do they feel, or how do they feel during the session? And then, is it applicable to their own lives? And I would also want to know, were they comfortable? Did they feel like they could ask questions? And I think that's part of my values and things as far as I look at how the class is going as a whole and what I would like them to get out of it. So I think that that's really important. And then just kind of like in a nutshell, after assessing all those things, that's how you can implement those things and make your program better. But also I think that's a good way to kind of spread the word and networking, like we talked about in the beginning. And then, so the plan in a nutshell would be obviously a questionnaire, the questions about feelings during and after the session, and then figuring out how applicable the knowledge was. I think that one's really important, because for me, if they come and they have a good time, but they don't really come away with, okay, this is something I can use in my life, then I didn't really accomplish what I was trying to accomplish. So I think all those things are really important as far as like helping the people that come to your classes understand what they come to understand, but also coming away with tools they can use to make things better in their lives. And I am out of time.
I really liked that because, you know, I hate the assessment process. You know, I think we've all said it's hard to have to read feedback about yourself, and it's hard to have to do that. And so I tend to think, this is pointless. We don't need this. It doesn't matter. But it really does. Like, you know, like you said, we're only going to be able to improve through the feedback. And so we need the feedback. I really liked how you mentioned, you know, you ask questions that find out if this was applicable for them, if it was something that they feel like could stick with them and actually like give them the tools they need. So I'm like, I know I did ask one of those, and I'm like, okay, you know, at the time I was like, well, that was kind of a weird question, but now I'm like, you know what, hey, I did a good job asking that question in there. So I just really enjoyed that. It was really insightful for me.
Thank you.
I also like that you talked about the questionnaire a lot, because that's something I actually kind of included too into my workshop. I did one during my workshop, and it was still anonymous, and it was focusing more on kind of getting an idea of where my audience members are at. So like asking questions like about my workshop, like the topics in my workshop. And then I did one at the end that was kind of like the evaluation thing, where it just like gives you the feedback of how well you did and what you can do better and stuff. But I feel like I should have probably focused more on that second one that does give you the feedback and stuff, because that is really hard to, you can't improve yourself if you don't have that. So I like that you talked about that, and that's something that I need to get better with. I should probably adjust mine.
Yeah, I really liked what you said about the evaluations and how, you know, if our audience doesn't go away with things that they're going to use to make their lives better, then they've kind of, you know, what's the point? And they've kind of just wasted their time. So even though I did get some feedback that was hard to hear, you know, I also got some really good feedback or lots of good feedback, lots of positive feedback. And in fact, one of actually a couple of different people told me that it was life-changing information for them. So that's really nice to hear, and it makes you feel like, oh, good, I accomplished my purpose, and that's good. That's what we're doing this all for, is to help people to improve their lives and make things better. So it's good to hear that positive stuff too.
Thanks, Lynette.
Okay, my turn, right? Okay. So this time I feel like I took a little bit different of a route than what I've done in the past. And I did it that way on purpose because I feel like a lot of the stuff that we've been, you know, like outlining and talking about are stuff that like I've incorporated within my workshop. And then this week's readings talking about, you know, what's the purpose of, you know, family life educators, where's their boundaries, where's the difference, you know, where do they fit? I kind of felt like, well, you know, it's not something that I really have applied, and I was worried that I wouldn't like understand it to the same depth if I didn't like address it solely. And I wanted to apply it to like my workshop a little bit so that I could make sure that I was like understanding it, because I think it's really important moving forward to know where, you know, where I fit, where I can contribute as, you know, a family life educator, if that's what I want to do. I think it's just really important to know that like I am qualified from here on out, you know, I am qualified. So I talked first about Doherty, however you say his name. And, you know, I just talked about how he believes that, you know, level 2 through 4 are appropriate for family life educators. And I said, now where do I think that I fall? I think that my workshop, I think, fell right where it should have, right in a level 3. And I feel like it falls there because I did the typical information and advice. You know, I had handouts with information, I had group discussions, or, you know, I was able to give advice. I had, you know, generic instructions of the, you know, the best way to communicate and strengthen marital communication. But then I also had, I feel like, a step above that where I did some discussions and activities that allowed people to share their experiences and their insights from their own marriages. And I had activities where they're supposed to do a lot of like self-reflection and kind of think about where their communication might be lacking and where it could improve. And then, so according to Doherty, I wanted to say like, okay, what would be outside of the reach according to him? And according to him, it would be if I was doing like repetitive sessions where I was focusing on trying to stimulate change. So if it was, you know, a workshop solely on correcting negative communication patterns in marriages where I met with them multiple times on an individual basis, that'd be out of my reach. And then for the Myers walls, of course, they had the questions of why, what, when, for whom, and how. And I felt like mine was within where it was supposed to be there. I answered all of the different questions. I just don't have time to talk about them because I'm too chatty. So I felt like my workshop was supporting healthy communication in marriages, that it focused on the marital unit and the accompanying dynamics, and that it was supposed to help prevent the development of poor communication, as well as help individuals recognize and change the negative communication patterns that can creep in so that it will be better in the future. And it was designed for married couples because all couples will experience poor communication at times. And then according to them, what would be out of my reach would be if it was a more therapeutic setting with, you know, diagnosed functioning problems. So if I had families that maybe have been seeking out help because they have, you know, verbal abuse or some kind of abuse within their communication, when maybe if they were, you know, in a low income area, and that kind of a thing would be out of my reach. That's it.
I really like that you not only talked about the Myers and Doherty guy, but that you applied it to your own workshop thing. That I like that you did that, because I just kind of talked about what they did as a whole, but you applied it, and I think by making it more personal, it kind of helped you to understand it better, or what that's just kind of what I got from it. But that's great that you did that.
I like the structure of your outline too, and how you, like Erin said, how you asked yourself those questions and made sure that your workshop is within, the boundaries of a family life educator. I think that's awesome. This one of the negative things I think about being an online student is that we're so far away, because I would love to go to everyone's workshops. I think they all sound so awesome. And Lexi, I think you should probably travel around the states and teach yours to all the youth and the young single adults of the church. Anyway, I just am so impressed with, your workshops, and I think it would be so interesting to get to go to them. But oh well, good job.
I agree, Rebecca. Really well done. I really like that you looked at both Doherty and Myron Walls and how they define, what is therapy, what is family life educator, what is your role, and you really looked at that, and from both perspectives, you are within the realm of acceptance. That's a made-up phrase, realm of acceptance, but for me, it works, realm of acceptance. And I like that because I think, like, we were talking about, like, the ethical principles, because we have so much effect on these families, like you said at the very beginning, we are now qualified for this. This is what we've been taught to do. So now this is our, for lack of a better term, our job. This is what we do. So they're going to know that, and we're going to come in, hopefully, with confidence and probably an air of authority. And so they're going to listen to what we have to say. And if what we have to say is therapeutic in nature, and it's not, that's not our place, then that can be very harmful to those people. And so it's really wonderful that you've taken that time to really make sure, okay, this is where I need to be, and this is where I am, and so I'm okay. And this is going to be helpful, and it's going to be supportive for these families. I think that is one of the most important things we could do, because even if our workshops are amazing, if they're not doing the appropriate thing, if they're not supporting and giving information and help, then we could really harm those families. So I think that's really well done. And I agree with Lynetta. Everyone's super excited for you. The only one I'm not excited for is mine. I'm scared.
All right, thanks, guys. I was the last one, right? Are we done now?
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm gonna stop the broadcast.